Welcome back to Hot Takes and Deep Dives. This is Jess, and I'm so excited to be welcoming back an old friend, Anthony Lario. Hey, Anthony.
Hey, Jess. What's going on, girl?
How are you?
You know, my soul is a little bit broken because of the new Taylor Swift album.
You know, I wanted to congratulate you on the release of the Taylor Swift album.
That's what people were doing the morning that, because I was like, okay, I'm going to sleep in. It was last Thursday morning. I was like, I'm going to sleep in. It was the first time I was able to sleep in all week. And I woke up at like 10 a.m. to like 50 text messages. The people were like, oh my God, like, what do you think? Are you okay? And I thought somebody died, like just somebody in general died. And it was Taylor Swift, which is even worse because that is more mentally draining on my mental health.
And give me like, what are your? Cause I know you're a huge Taylor Swift fan. Like, what are your immediate like top 3 feelings?
Well, I think so many people love this album, and I think it's kind of like the first time that it's like cool to like a Taylor Swift album for the general public, because it's like it's different. It's like going back to her roots pretty much. So people are like, oh, like the old Taylor like did come to the phone, and I'm like, but this is what she's always kind of been. It's like, this is just an album. I think what's beautiful about it is that she wrote it in isolation, and I don't think she ever planned on anybody to hear it. So it was just her. She wasn't trying to make it for somebody else. And I just think her storytelling is better than ever. And I love a good omniscient narrator. I love a good, strong, misunderstood female character. And that's kind of who like narrates the album. And I love that.
I feel like I could almost get even more into it if it had been released like October, November.
In the fall?
Yeah. It's strange that it came out now.
I think that somebody had said that to me yesterday, and I was thinking about that. And that's the aesthetic, is like the fall. But I think that the album, since it takes place in the summer, but it's told from a fall perspective, so it's told like, so I guess she just released it in the summer. But I understand what you mean. I feel like it was one of those things that she's kind of like very quick and like super creative, and I think that it was all done, all wrapped up, and she's like, I just got to put it out. Like, I think that's what she was thinking.
Yeah. You know, I want to introduce people to you. You know, you were one of the first people I met when I was entering the sort of Bravo podcast community, which can be, you know, quite large. And there's a lot of players in the mix. And you've always been, I remember I guested on, you used to have a Bravo podcast, or like a podcast in general.
Yes.
And I remember I guested on that like maybe over a year ago, and we've stayed in touch. And you've always just been so loyal and such a genuinely like good friend to me.
Oh,
and so like
you.
I just always have had like such like a warm spot in my heart for you. You know, why did you quit the podcast?
Well, so and first of all, I think the same about you. I think you're so awesome. But I stopped because I started really monetizing off of working with a lot of the talent separately, because by nature I do branding and PR and creative just work in general. And so some like Bravo talent had heard my podcast and heard what I did for a living. So I eventually quit my 9-to-5 and started monetizing financially primarily off of working with Bravo talent and talent from other reality TV shows, doing creative stuff. So it became like super conflict of interest. And like, to be fair, I felt like I can't like talk about these shows without getting into like the production aspect, because that's where my mind goes, like first and foremost.
Totally.
I'm not really like into like, because I get it, even though the arguments are happening, like what is driving them is the story and production. And I felt like my audience was like, but talk about how much of a bitch she is. And I was like, but that's not really where my mind goes first. And it was just too conflict of interest with talent, and so I stopped. But I've been like toying around with, I had finished a few episodes for a new podcast that had nothing to do with Bravo. It was just pure comedy podcast. But I put it on hold when the pandemic started. I just want to do something new when it feels right. But for now, I just do funny stuff on my Instagram.
How annoying was it when you heard the name of Teddy's podcast? Because immediately I was like, did she just rip off Anthony Lario? Because the name of tell everybody the name of your podcast. Of what it was.
It was Tony's Tea Corner.
And the name of Teddy's podcast is Teddy's Teapot.
Yeah. I kind of felt like what happened after I put, because here's the thing. podcasts are so interesting because even if you don't necessarily listen, you see a lot of the names on Instagram or in press and stuff. And so I feel like these names become like kind of embedded in the back of your mind. So like a lot of people might not have listened to Tony's Tea Corner, but they knew it as a familiar name. And so I feel like after that, I kept seeing like Teddy's Teapot, and then it was like a lot of the tea alliterations with tea something. And I was like, all right, I don't even really like the whole spilling the tea thing. I just did it because it was catchy. You can take it, whatever.
No, but seriously, as soon as I saw that, I was like, did she just literally just like grab that name from Anthony?
Probably one of her production people saw that and was just like, oh, we can do an alliteration with her name too. But so it is like a ripoff, but whatever, Teddy, take some fucking accountability. And just credit me.
Okay, I really want to dive into New York, Beverly Hills, specifically like Brandy Denise. I mean, it's so funny. Like, I haven't even been calling it like Beverly Hills lately. It's more just like, can we talk about Brandy and Denise?
Yes, for sure.
Right?
I mean, me and you get it because we're both gay. We get it. I get what Brandy is going through. I get what she's feeling.
What do you talk more about that?
I feel like it's like a rite of passage for like every gay person to sleep with a straight person and develop feelings for them without the straight person really wanting it to be out there. And even though it's the right thing to do to not out that person, it's so hard because it's like you're so enthralled and in love, or not even in love. It's just like, I feel like with gay relationships, every relationship feels so big because it's not the normal. And quote unquote normal, and so I don't think what Brandy did was right, but I get what she's feeling.
So wait, your take on it is that Brandy has feelings for Denise and she just feels...
Yeah, I think 100%. I think that I think that what she said when she's like, you know, I'm bi, everybody knows that, and I feel like she felt, it's kind of what who was saying it? Was it Teddy or Dorit or somebody was commentating too? And I was like, geez, what a great way to look at it, because that's what I thought immediately, was that Brandy was very enthralled by her and attracted and started developing these weird feelings, not weird feelings, just normal feelings that you develop for somebody. And I think that's why it hurt her so much, and she's shaking and crying about it because she's hurt. So
why is she drawing so much attention to the infidelity part of it?
I guess just because it's a deflection tactic, and
this is such an interesting take. This is a fucking hot take. This is interesting. I mean, yeah, she has talked about her sort of infatuation with Denise for sure.
Yeah, a lot of people do, and I feel like there's a lot of people, and I feel like it was kind of like a running thing on the show. Like Erica is like, you know, oh, I want to have a threesome with, like, you know, watching Denise and Aaron have sex would be like right up there next to my greatest porn of all time. Yeah. And like, you know, everybody kind of makes jokes, but Denise is like a very, she's got an energy to her, which is inherently feminine, which is attractive for guys or if, you know, pansexual people or whatever. And then like, you know, she's got this kind of masculine energy too, in a weird way.
Yeah. That
like I feel like is so attractive as well. And so I think she's a very easy person to develop a thing for.
Totally.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't think about it like that, because that's immediately what I thought was like one of my first relationships was not really like my first kind of things was with a guy who was straight who had a girlfriend, and I was like, it was just so, I was so angry, and my goal is to just like out him and to like destroy him and destroy his relationship. And I was just like, like, and it's just because you have feelings for them and your feelings aren't validated.
I think, okay, so yes, I definitely picked up on that she was like jilted and like hurt.
Yeah.
It confused me how basically her description of this night, basically like she's talking about sleeping on a cot, which was that alone came off very strange to me. Like, why is Brandy Glanville like talking about sleeping on a cot or getting like a rollaway bed? Like that whole scene sounds really weird.
Well, Brandy was I think she's desperate for cash too, because when she was supposed to come on my podcast when I was doing it, and like all of a sudden in the last second, it's like, by the way, I need $600 to come on your podcast. I'm like, okay, that's not going to happen. Sorry.
So did she wind up doing it?
No, I was not going to pay her $600. I said, that's not how this works. I said, you should know, of all people, you're in the podcast industry. You know, you guest swap, you cross promote. I'm not paying you to come on my show. This isn't a paid appearance, babe.
That's fucking wild. Yeah, like this isn't Letterman.
Yeah, exactly. It's so absurd. Do people even get paid to go on Letterman or Jimmy Fallon and stuff?
They get I think if they're being flown out there like by like a movie studio or a television studio, or even if it's like a Bravo related thing, I think they get like a per diem. Like for example, like the Vanderpump Kids, I think they fly them out first class or business class. They put them up at a hotel and they get a per diem. That's their payment, which is pretty sweet if you ask me. I mean, it's like a free trip to New York.
Yeah, it's like a free trip. I just think that like people are, and that's what like deters people, I feel like, in this industry, primarily like the Bravo world and like reality world, is that they're also like money driven. And it's like, okay, you already get paid for being on your show. Like Viola Davis doesn't get paid when she goes to promote a movie. Like she gets flown for sure, but it's like they think that everything is like, it requires monetary like supplements. It's like, that's just not how it works.
Who are you so I know that you do like social media for a couple of the wives. I mean, like, can you talk about?
Yeah. I mean, I right now my main client is Bronwyn from Orange County, who is like awesome. She's a huge activist, and I think that like basically like what I do with my business, I only really will like work with people that I like believe in and like believe in their message, and I can creatively like help them and guide them, and I want to ensure like people's longevity like on their television show that they're on, while also like creating a backbone for them that if they ever choose to not be on their show anymore, or they get fired, it's like they have something to fall back on, which is inherently them. Because I think what the disconnect is a lot of the times when a housewife gets fired is it's like you don't want to follow them afterwards throughout their lives, because all you care about is them on the TV show. So if I can like help somebody hone in on, especially on their social media or video content, on something outside of it, then it's like, you know, people know Brandy obviously from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but you know, she's done a good job of like with her podcast, like really branding herself as like a pseudo celebrity her books outside of the show. So that's what I really work with people on.
I love it. So Bronwyn's your number one. I mean, I know that they're filming OC right now. And actually Shannon and her entire family got COVID. And they couldn't go on. I think they're doing some road trip right now as they're filming OC. So she's not on the trip. I think somebody else wasn't able to go on the trip. But I think OC is going to be the franchise where we see the virus play into the storyline the most.
Yes, 100%. I think that, especially because that area is so flooded with COVID, that it's going to be harder for them to film there than it is in like Jersey right now. Like they can film okay in Jersey. I was looking at these stats earlier. It's like if you go to a house party in New Jersey, New York City, Boston, and Philadelphia, I think were the cities, your chance of getting the coronavirus at a house party of 60 or more people is like 0.9 something percent. But in Newport Beach, it's like 77% chance that you're going to get coronavirus.
I mean, Jersey, they're filming right now too. I think they're all down by the shore, just like living it up.
Yes. Yeah, they're doing like the kind of interesting thing, which I think is going to actually bring us back to old school Housewives, where a lot of the filming is done like by themselves. Like it's just solo scenes and then it's pieced together, which is what I missed in Housewives, which was like a lot of solo scenes. And then you piece it together when they all go out together later. That's why New York and I are not vibing as heavily right now, because I get like the comedy aspect of like them all together and drinking at the same time, but I miss like the pure storyline.
I just kind of feel like what used to make Housewives so great was this idea of following storylines of these individual women, and then when they get together, they have their problems with each other, but really at the end of the day, it's about them personally. And we've lost that, I think.
I mean, I think the Scary Island trip was the first time the producers realized when we take this group of women and throw them in a house together, television magic happens. And I think ever since Scary Island, the trips became a requirement and more group scenes became a requirement.
Yes. You're definitely right. There was a lot more parties together after that. And I think the season where it works the best, honestly, on New York is either season 6 or 7, the Aviva leg season is like amazing, and then Bethany's first season back is really good. And I think because there were 8 housewives, which is like a lot on season 7, I don't think there's ever been that many before.
Yeah,
8.
no, because they kept Kristen Takeman for some guy.
Yeah. But it's like funny because like that season I think is like so gold because each of them has their personal thing. But when they're together, it's like awesome too. And I like when they split off into like groups of like 3 or like 4, like alone without the rest of the people. And then you can kind of like figure out where like the sweet spot is.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, for me, my sort of housewives thesis is I love when there is a story building and building throughout the season. It comes to a climax. So like when you think of, I'm thinking of the first 5 seasons of Jersey and Beverly Hills, Potomac, like last season of Potomac, everything, it's building and building. If you think about season 8, well, pretty much every season of New York has had this, where something is building, with the exception of this season, which is why there's a massive problem going on in New York right now. There's nothing, there's no glue, there's no center, there's no like center of gravity, but there's also no story. There's no story that we haven't seen already like 5 times over.
Yes.
Now that they're getting into casting for next, I mean, actually, I saw there's an OK Magazine article that's not confirmed.
Yes, I saw that. I don't know how true that is.
Okay, so basically the article says Alicia Quarles, who's an entertainment reporter, like she's a reporter for like Daily Mail, that she's like a diversity, she basically could be cast, to sort of check the diversity box, which how thrilled is somebody if like that's the reason why they're cast? Like it's almost...
Of course. Yeah, it's derivative of who they actually are.
But it also because it hasn't been confirmed by Bravo, it could be the case of somebody talking too soon, the way Anthony Scaramucci's wife, Deirdre Ball, was in talks and then blew it because she talked.
Yeah, because they don't like when somebody's like thing is blown before the season starts filming. They don't like that. And I think that it's a good idea, obviously, to bring in diverse people, but I think that what they have to do is like get rid of a lot of people in the current cast.
Like, what would you have them, if you were producing this show, like what would you do with New York at this point?
Well, so I think that Leah, I also hate the idea that people look at Bethany like she was some oracle of like amazingness on this show. Of course, Bethany was a great character, but she was inherently flawed, which is why I liked her. I just don't like this idea that people are like, Bethany was always right. Like, Bethany was not always right. And I see a little bit of that in Leah, where Leah kind of reminds me of like Bethany alternate universe on Bethany's first season, where like she's figuring things out, she's going through stuff, and all of these women are just so different than her that like she kind of becomes the omniscient narrator, which is what I'm obsessed with. I love when somebody's like a narrator,
like a Greek chorus.
Yeah, and that's who she is, and she's kind of become the narrator. So I think what they have to do is, and this is going to sound crazy, but don't play too much into Leah's friends, because then it's going to make Leah a little bit too much a part of it, that she's not going to have people to battle with. I like that she's the outcast in a little bit of a way, which is what Bethany did so well, and I think it's probably why they never brought in one of Bethany's friends, because she's so strong by herself that she doesn't need anybody. And I think that's the same thing with Leah. I would say maybe bring her sister on as a friend of. I would say...
I feel like the sister's too not made for TV and messy. I feel like her sister is great for like to do a scene here and there. I think if we saw more of the sister, it would be chaos. And also, she has a newborn. She's not doing a reality show.
Yeah,
I'd be shocked.
Maybe it would be more so like a daughter character, like how they, we get to know these people's families and they're like cast members. So like keep her on as that, but bring in somebody for like have as a friend of, and then shift things around. I think that, and I don't mean to sound ageist here by any means, but I think that they do need more people who are what the title is, like Real Housewives of New York. They need more people who live in New York, who are 40-somethings, who are going through stuff. I think that to be honest, I think that Luann, Sonia, Ramona, and Dorinda have like run their course. And so I don't know if I would necessarily get rid of all of them, but I think I would start taking some of them out. Kind of like what they did in OC.
Or kind of what they did in New York, season 5, where they just like cleaned out a bunch of people and brought in. I do want to eventually pivot back to Beverly Hills because I want to get your thoughts on a few more things. But since we're talking about New York, so a couple of things. You were actually like intimately involved with the filming of this past season.
Yeah, so I used to work for Dorinda. She was actually the first person like in the stratosphere that I like creatively worked for. And so I saw a lot of this stuff happening. And I can say, honestly, because I feel like a lot of people, they go to Housewives events and they like see the events filmed and like that's like what they think it is. And I saw a lot of those small scenes filmed, like one-on-one and stuff. And it is so real. And I was shocked because I thought that it was like, you know, going to be scripted, or people would yell cut in the middle of a scene, or the bravo, bravo, bravo. And that doesn't really happen. And there's so much that is filmed that you don't see, which is why I think watching this season, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't they show that? Or like, why didn't they show this? Like, I think that, obviously, I think Dorinda has a lot of problems, but I do think she's an inherently complex person with a lot of strengths and also a lot of weaknesses. And we saw like a quick flashback to like Richard's daughter's wedding where like, but they made the scene about like Dorinda and John. Like Dorinda was like yelling at John about something. It's like they filmed that whole thing. They didn't show that at all. And maybe that's because Dorinda's the villain this season and they wanted to take out anything that made her look good. But there's a lot of stuff that they shot at her that made her look a lot better than she does on the show.
Like what?
But,
like what were you surprised that they cut out?
Like there were a lot of scenes similar to like the scene of she and Hannah going to get the cheeseburger at Jimbo's. There were a lot of scenes like that I was like, damn, like Richard's like the anniversary of his death. She did a lot of musing on, you know, what it was like, and it's stuff that we've never heard before. I can't even remember like specifics, but just like really her emotional compass aspect to it. And she had like seen like a balloon flying outside of her apartment and took a picture, and it was like, you know, you felt empathy for her, and it doesn't excuse bad behavior, but she's a lot more complex than like this rage that they're making her out to be, which I don't know if that makes her sound worse, or you almost rather her just be surface level mean, but it comes from like a deep, deep place.
Do you agree with the philosophy out there that the reason why she's acting out and so full of anger and rage is because she hasn't properly mourned Richard's death? Or is it that she's going through something else, whether it be a substance abuse situation or she's just unhappy in her life? This is just not where she expected to be in her life, meaning she spent 7 years in a relationship with a guy that she knew she was never going to like take to the next level. And she's sort of like, she doesn't even want to live in New York City. Who knows? Like, what do you attribute the anger, the rage, the acting out, the drunken behavior when she says the way, I hate the way she talks to Luann when she's drunk, saying, you have a mugshot of your drunkenness.
I know.
How do you react to that?
I think that it's a combination of a few things. I think that she, like I said before, is a very complex person. And I think that when Bethany left, I feel like what she did was she thought that she was going to be the next Bethany. These are just my thoughts. These aren't things that I know. These are just things that I think. And I think that her interpretation of Bethany's spot on the show is much different than what it actually was. So Bethany, what she would do is she would yell at people and fight with them and call them names and stuff, but it was always from a place of wanting to resolve an issue and to eventually get to a place where they would be together. It was like a kind of like how I am. Like Bethany's like a very like Cancer with like a Scorpio rising, which is like exactly what I am. And so you might scream at somebody, but it's coming from a place, a very visceral, obvious place of let's work together and change this. Dorinda's is just simply to bury you in a grave, to bury you in a grave. And so I think that maybe they like kind of pushed her to act that way at a certain point, but I also think that that's what she thought she had to do. And I do think that she never mourned Richard, but there's a difference between mourning and remembering. So she does a lot of remembering and a lot of regretting, but she never actually mourns. Mourning has the end goal of moving on. And I think that she tried to move on, by being with John, but I think it's a lot of remembering. She's always remembering and regretting and musing into, and she doesn't like to accept help either. I don't think she likes people to help her, and even though she might get mad at you for not helping her the way that she wants to be helped, she doesn't like help, but she wants it. She says she does.
You were talking about the producers sort of pushing her in a certain direction related to Bethany. So going back to BravoCon, were you at BravoCon?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So Dorinda had a bunch of stuff going on at BravoCon. You know, she had a couple of panels. She did the whole, workout, the aerobics thing. And a friend of mine, like a good friend of mine, this is like 2 degrees of separation away, okay? Like a very close friend of his was working for the venue at BravoCon and was assigned to be Dorinda's handler. So basically just like shadowing Dorinda and helping her for those 3 days. You're putting your hands over your face.
Don't even want to. I want to know, but I don't want to know. Okay, what was it?
So nothing terrible. So she told my friend, this woman's account was that Dorinda was very stressed that whole weekend and was talking to this woman about the pressure that she felt from producers, because at this point it was November, so like they'd been filming for a while and clearly like nothing really was significant was going on, and the producers were just riding her that like, we don't have Bethany, we need you to push it, we need you to make shit happen. Mm-hmm. And that's like a direct account from this random person.
And that sounds pretty accurate. It sounds accurate. But at the same time, I don't know if they're pushing her. I think maybe she thinks that that's what they said. And that's what I was getting to before. Like, I think that she thinks that she had to fill those shoes. So like when they're pushing her to bring it, I think maybe what they originally thought was, okay, Dorinda's just going to be the main character. But I think Dorinda took it as, I have to be the new Bethany. No, it's just be Dorinda. And so it's like, it's just switching. And so inherently what happened when they brought in Leah was Leah fell into the main character, which was ironically a similar thing to Bethany. And so I think it just kind of happened by happenstance. And maybe that's why a lot of Dorinda's stuff is cut out, because it's conflicting with the overall storyline and narrative of the show that like she kind of created by pushing it, which was that she's like the villain.
On a scale of 1 to 5, how abused were you personally by working with, I mean, we'll just use Dorinda as an example, but we can make it broader, but like in your work with these housewives, like how abusive is the situation toward you?
Here's the thing. I think that 99% of the housewives that I've worked with they're women, and I'm obsessed with women. I just am so enthralled by especially women of a certain age. I love the idea of women coming into their own and being themselves and figuring out who they are in front of the camera. So most of them that I work with are very strong and powerful, but they don't really they don't take out their anger on you. So 99% of the time, I'm not abused at all. Like, not at all. Now, would I say, this is like a difficult way to angle it. I think that Dorinda doesn't know that she is coming off as abusive. I think that she thinks that you are just as much a part of the work as her. So when something goes wrong in her mind, it is a reflection of her fucking up. And so you're in it with her. So it's like, this is us, like, but it comes out as like a very much you type thing. So she is not somebody, a personality type like hers. I'm trying to say this very prolifically. I would not want to work for at all. I also think that it's like telling that like certain things have come at, like she's said in the press, like about the guy from Queer Eye who came out about like not being paid. Like, why did she like come right out and say like, oh, you just want your 15 minutes of fame? That I'm going to use this as like a platform to say this. People, young people, especially LGBTQ plus people, are so enthralled by these characters that they see on TV in the entertainment industry, whether it's Bravo or not. And I think it's a very jolting thing for them to work for somebody who does not, have their best interest in heart. And when they are not treated with respect or not paid, then it deters them from following their dreams and working in the industry. And anybody who's listening, I want you to know that if that happened to you, it's an isolated thing, but that does happen a lot. And it probably will happen to you again. But I think that weaponizing somebody's experience working for you and saying, oh, you just want your 15 minutes of fame when somebody talks about something that they are not happy with is disgusting, especially for LGBTQ plus people. And I think by doing that, not only is it harmful to that person, but it's harmful to all people, especially young gay people wanting to get into the industry. So don't weaponize people wanting to get paid as their 15 minutes of fame. The only reason why they're coming out is so the public can see it firsthand and in person and put pressure on you to pay them. Nobody wants their name in the press because they weren't paid. Let's just say that. Nobody wants that to happen. People just want to get paid for work that they do, just like the plumber comes over, just like the person who wants to inspect your house wants to get paid. People want to get paid. So just pay them and don't weaponize them wanting 15 minutes of fame as a thing to push them aside. Because I think that people like her think that they can talk loud, but guess what? I can talk louder. So.
Yeah. Were you around for all the construction that was going on at Bluestone Manor?
Yes, I was. I was in the Berkshires and it was it was great. It was cool. And she's very lovely when it's like the coffee's on and she's a very warm person. But it might be her talent. Listen, her industry is so different than any other industry. So like to be working for somebody whose life is on TV, you are enthralled within their life. But that's just the nature of the beast. That's just the nature of the business. It's all depending on how the employer or the famous person that you're working for goes about treating you.
Yeah. Who else have you worked with aside from Dorinda and Bronwyn? Who else?
Barb is one of my favorite clients. Barb the Builder from New York last
Barbara
season.
Kay. What did you do for her?
I do socials. We're working on something cool that's coming out. And just like general like creative branding, cross promos with other people. I got lunch with a socially distanced lunch with Margaret and Barbara a couple weeks ago. I do some work for Margaret here and there, just small stuff. I mean, really, it's just I try to angle it like, you call me for advice on whatever you need, like anything across the board, whether it's show stuff, socials, branding stuff, just call me. So, and we can talk through it.
Speaking of Barbara, I mean, this is a little bit of a pivot, but speaking of Barbara, what do you make of Elise this season? And the fact that it's been confirmed, she is not going to be part of the reunion, which I think is kind of nuts at this point. They're filming, actually, it was just announced, they're filming the reunion Wednesday, August 5th. Next week. Tinsley has touched down in New York. She's quarantining to take part in the reunion. And the best part of this is I'm reading in page 6 that they're filming it on Long Island. They're going to be filming it in the Hamptons, which like this couldn't be more perfect. I mean, it just brings you back to like the golden age of like RHONY and like season 1, the first episode, the premiere episode of season 1 of Real Housewives of New York took place in the Hamptons. It's like kind of perfect.
I think Elise is the shit, and I don't get why she's not at the reunion. I think that it's probably something to do with Ramona. Ramona's becoming very Vicky Gunvalson, and I think that, she's definitely not as strong. I remember seeing Elise film when she wasn't even signed on as a friend of yet, because she signed on as friend of like kind of halfway through, and I thought that she was like so cool, and I was surprised. I saw some things that she would say that are cut out. So I kind of feel like the editing job is like made to kind of like make it like Elise isn't there. So I'm confused as to why, if they're not going to bring her to the reunion, why did they even give her confessionals? And why did they give her social distanced confessionals too? Like, it just doesn't really make sense. Barb was obviously a stronger character.
Oh, yeah.
But Elise, I think, is fun. I think that she's like funny. Yeah, I think that she's quiet. I think she's quiet.
She's another one who's just like not made for TV. Like, there's no way. I'd be shocked if they like bring her back. But it's particularly crazy that they're not bringing her to the reunion because she was so. She was a goddamn mute the first half of the season, and now she's actually legitimately in the mix. Like, she and Ramona do have this real friendship falling out. She's now real friends with Leah. Like, they're on vacation. She's at her house. Leah's at her house. They're doing cameos together in wherever they are, in the Hamptons, I guess. It's just so bizarre. That they're cutting her out of the. What was the point? It's like if a tree falls in the woods. Like, what was the point of this?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. That would kind of have been equivalent to them not bringing Barb to the reunion last year. You know what? Do you remember this old season of Orange County when it was Lizzie Rovsek's first season before she was friend of the next season? And Lizzie's friend Danielle was a friend of the show, but she had no confessionals. All her dialogue was pretty much cut, and they just didn't even mention her at the reunion. It reminds me of that with Elise, but they're somewhere in the middle. So it's like she's involved, but like not so involved. Is she going on the cast trip to Mexico or no?
No, Ramona. So I was at a taping that happened right after they got back from Mexico, and It was the 15th anniversary. There's a party that takes place. It's the 15th anniversary of Married to the Mob. So like Elise's parents were there. Rob, the baby daddy, was there. It was like a whole thing downtown. It was actually like a really fun party. And Elise was there and kept going back up to producers. Like, she kept talking to producers. And eventually toward the end of the night, when the real music comes on, they pull the lights off, all the cameras are down. I went over to that producer and I was like, what's up with her? Like, what's the problem? It just seemed like something was really wrong because it happened like 3 times. And he said to me, she's upset. She goes, she's very upset because she's not mic'd.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh, and this was like kind of into filming for a little bit.
This was December.
So why did they do that? If she's a friend of an event, why wouldn't they mic her? I don't think that they also expected for the audience to like kind of go crazy over her.
She wasn't mic'd, and I also talked to her and I said to her, what, because this was right off the heels of the Mexico trip and it was like very well publicized that like she wasn't on the trip. And I said, like, why didn't you go to Mexico? And she said, Ramona didn't want me there. And she goes, so I just went on vacation with my husband.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, damn.
That was a good imitation of her. Yeah, I don't know. It's like weird. I think that Ramona like wanted her on the show because Ramona felt like she needed an ally. Because I saw the text where like Elise who is a lovely person, was like kind of like almost seemed like Elise didn't want to film, but then it was like when she signed a contract and she was filming because Ramona wanted her to film so bad. But I guess the narrative shift where Elise kind of went against Ramona and that pissed Ramona off.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I also don't like the idea that, like, it's, again, like, weaponizing somebody's work for 15 minutes of fame. And it's annoying to see them. Ramona's whole argument is, well, she just wanted to be famous. She just wanted to be on the show. What the fuck are you doing, Ramona? You're on the show, and you wanted your friend to film, so that's bullshit. Stop demeaning other people's experiences as just them wanting 15 minutes of fame. If that's the industry, fame comes with it.
I mean, I think a lot of viewers don't understand that a lot of the times the fights between the women, it's actually not about, it's never about what you think it's about. It's always.
Exactly. I said this the other day.
It is always about production, like 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, well, how many times do you hear them, like, clipped dialogue where you know that they're probably saying a producer's name, but they clip the dialogue to make it like they're yelling at each other? Yeah. And so it's like always a fight with like production, who, by the way, the people who produce New York Housewives are like some of the best people ever. Chris DeRosa is a fucking genius. JP, a genius. Barry, Randy Rosenthal, they're amazing creative people. And I think that like it's probably tough for them because they produce a bunch of other shit. Like they're creative in other ways in their lives. But this is a job that they're hired, that they're on. And these people who are on the cast, it is their be-all, end-all. So it's like it must be difficult for them, but they're really creative geniuses.
Do you have like any good examples of that where like you think you're watching a fight about one thing, but it's actually about something else, like behind the scenes production?
I don't really necessarily know on Housewives. I'm sure that after we get off this call, I'll like think of something and then text you. But I just remember watching like a lot of the guy took a production class, like a class, and it was talking about Dance Moms was the example that he kept using. And it was funny. They like released like the real audio of what was going on in the scene and then the edited one. And it was literally just all of them screaming at production. And you could literally hear them being like, I'm not fucking doing that, this fucking bitch. And they're talking about one of the producers, but you see on the show, it looks like they're talking about Abby Lee Miller or something.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's like funny to see. And a lot of the times, I guess, because these producers, they're hired to make the show the best show possible. But it's almost like the same thing that like, they think that the producers always have their backs and personal interests at heart. And it's not like a slight if they don't. It's just they're making the show. Like, you signed on to do the show. And I feel like if the women just had that more so in mind, then it wouldn't be as good of a show because they act very angry when something happens. They wouldn't be as angry if they were, compartmentalizing and saying this is just production.
Totally. Okay, speaking of production, I want to talk about the last 20 minutes of Beverly Hills last week. This truly Emmy Award worthy scene between Brandy, Kyle, Teddy, and Kim Richards.
Why? Because of the acting or the production?
I watched it like 5 times, and I want to hear every single person's like take on this. But truly, there's been a lot of talk about the timeline, whether this was a reshot scene. I literally like got out like a fucking like paper map and an abacus to try and like make sense of the timeline, like in terms of like when they could have filmed this.
Yeah.
Here are the actual hard facts. I like literally wrote this down.
Okay, great.
Okay. So they're claiming this was filmed before Rome. Like they're the context of the scene is they're packing for Rome. Kim is coming in to drop something off for Kyle. Brandy happens to be in the car. They make reference that that Brandy's birthday was, quote, 2 days ago. They say this over and over, that Brandy's birthday was 2 days ago. Her birthday is November 16th. Okay.
And when were the trip after that? Or before that?
The trip was okay. So here's the order of events. BravoCon weekend. So they were all in New York. BravoCon weekend was the 15th, 16th, 17th, and they all had the Beverly Hills panel was the 17th. The Beverly Hills photo op was the 17th. They were really busy that Sunday. They left for Rome straight from New York. I remember there was a huge deal that like that cast and the Potomac cast both were leaving from New York straight to their cast trips. Mm-hmm. And when you look at this, you know how it jumps ahead 18 hours and they're like all of a sudden at the airport?
Yeah.
It's JFK. There's like no way about it. Like you cannot dispute this. There's not a palm tree in sight. You can see the luggage people, like the airport workers, they're in winter coats. It's like not LAX. And also, does it really matter? Like if they had to do a pickup shot, does it actually matter?
I think it matters I don't think it matters in context of the show because things are filmed out of order all the time. Like I was even like in New York, they tried to make it look like Dorinda got to Rhode Island first, but like that's not what happened. Like they were all there way before her because Dorinda didn't leave to go to Rhode Island until like they tried to make it like she left from the Berkshires to go to Rhode Island. We filmed the Berkshire scene with the interior designer like Labor Day weekend. So they tried to make it like she went from the Berkshires to Rhode Island, but that's not what happened.
That's so weird. Why bother? When she's like having a drink alone at the bar, that's so, but why? Who cares?
I guess because the girls might have been filming another scene somewhere else or like they had downtime, so they just filmed Dorinda getting there. So I don't know why they did that, but I guess it's like for the sake of like fitting in, like, so they have to figure out places, like they needed to fit in like her doing the interior design on the Berkshire's house. So like that was probably the best place to fit it in, was like like that's the reason why all the girls are alone, because Dorinda's in the Berkshires, when really what she was doing was like a paid appearance somewhere else.
Right.
So it was like, you know, it's just one of those things that they had to fit it in. So they do that all the time, which like I don't mind, but I think what it does matter is like for the way that the cast interacts. So like I think Beverly Hills' main problem is that there's not real, genuine, authentic friendship. And the job description to be a Real Housewife is to have an authentic persona and just react how you would react in these situations. But what they do is they get rid of that idea of friendship and loyalty and alliances, which the other housewives have on other franchises. And their only goal is to either out somebody's bad behavior
dirty
or
laundry.
dirty laundry, and to create a storyline, because I think they're all kind of so boring that there's no inherent storyline. So Lisa Rinna might have been so close with Garcelle, Sutton, and Denise and had a really personal relationship with them. I mean, when it comes down to it, Lisa Rinna is like the main problem on, at least I think. I think she is the person holding Beverly Hills stagnant. She has genuine relationships with all these people, but instead of being loyal to them when problems arise, she plays producer and goes against them. And it's like, this isn't Big Brother. Like, so let's just react how you would react genuinely if somebody was attacking.
I want to get into Rinna and like the inevitable turn that's going to happen with Rinna next season, because eventually it's going to turn on her. Like somebody, they do this every single season. It's either LVP, this year it's Denise. It's going to be somebody's turn that you just keep running these people off the shows, and like eventually it's going to
be Rinna. Yeah, eventually.
So I want to talk more about that, but that scene in particular, here's the issue. Did Kyle and Teddy already know this information, and were they acting?
Oh, yeah. Yes, 100%. And I think that they knew this information, but maybe not through Brandy, maybe peripherally through Kim or something. Mm-hmm. Which is why I don't think that Brandy was being disingenuous when she was crying and stuff. I think that was probably the first time, whether or not it was the first time, she was saying it on camera. It was very real. It's like a therapy session. You tell your friends and family about what you're going to say at your therapy session, but then when you get to therapy, you start crying. And so it's like, you know, I think that they knew, though, 100%. I think that they had some sort of idea of the story, and then they were hearing it from Brandy.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that this was filmed? Like, isn't it a major issue if this is being filmed after Rome?
In what sense do you think?
Because like, they would have already had all this information is going to be dwelled on for 3 episodes in Rome, and now they're going to go back and reshoot pretending they're hearing it. I mean, I guess we need to see it. I guess like for production, they had to go to New York for BravoCon. It's like they had other obligations, but I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, doesn't really matter.
I think it matters for what you said, the sake of the authenticity of the show. That's why I think it matters. Because when we find this information, it kind of sort of, and I hate that like the world is kind of like this, but when you find out false information about something, it discounts the real one, whether it is, you know, like no matter who says it. It's just like you tend to then have a like cynical view on the rest of it. So it affects the viewership for sure, them finding out this information. Because it's like, well, what should I trust?
Right. And okay, piggybacking on the Elise not being at the reunion, Brandy not making appearance on this. They've already filmed this Beverly Hills reunion. That to me is insane.
Yeah, it's insane. And like, why is she going to have a one-on-one with Andy? Like, they're just going to talk about Denise the whole time. Like, it's stupid. It's silencing Denise, first of all, so she can't have civil discourse with, you know, Brandy at the reunion. I mean, with Brandy. It just seems like elevating Brandy's voice over like the rest of them. When she was so involved in it, she might as well fight it out in person, because it doesn't give them the opportunity to say things kind of like, well, you know, you lied about that, like, and put them on the spot. Like, why did you lie about it? So it's like taking, whether or not it was Denise's like decision maybe behind the scenes to have Brandy not come, that's where it gets shady, because then maybe Brandy does know something that is true that Denise is trying to hide, but you know, it takes away the authenticity of it, and that's what I think Beverly Hills' problem is. It's contrived, and it's just not real.
I mean, look, I love Beverly Hills. Like, this is my favorite season of Beverly Hills in years. I mean, I've actually always loved it, to be honest. But this has been, this is far and away more compelling than the Puppygate season. Like, I'm into it. Like, I am fully on board with this Brandy and Denise storyline. Like, give it to me. Like, give it to me like 10 times over. Like, I'm way into it. Even though Brandy's like a fucking mess and a disaster. But I just love Denise. I love Denise. I could watch her and Aaron. Like,
I love her too. They're great TV. I used to love Denise's show, her reality show that was on E! A while back. Yeah. I could watch her by herself, and I think that people come off with like this thing that like she's boring. I'm like, is she? Like, I don't think that she's boring at all.
The opposite.
She's Denise Richards.
She's Denise fucking Richards. Did you read the article, the Washington Post article on her?
Oh, what was it?
They did a whole interview, a feature on her, and it was phenomenal. She gives this funny quote. She says, people can believe whatever they want, but Wild Things was not a documentary.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good quote.
Good, right? I love it.
That's a good quote. I mean, here's the thing, and I don't get why I get them wanting to take down somebody. I get the idea that maybe Denise didn't film as much. It's work, and they're feeling like they did not get the same respect as Denise does with her high paycheck and her not showing up to film as much. But that's an HR problem. That's a problem. Don't bring it there. That's for the higher ups to decide. So if it's your job to do your job and work with that person, then do it.
And also, I cannot help but wonder if Brandy didn't come with this story, what would have happened? Like, where would we be? Like, what would be the second arc? What would be the arc of, would it all just be about Denise and the kids? I mean, like, really? Like, we were going to do 20 episodes of that? They would have been in deep shit if Brandy didn't come out with this. I don't know. There's just something.
You're right. Well, it's because so much stuff is filmed. Like, all filmings that I've seen of the show, I never really know, like, while watching something happen, like, what the storyline is going to be. Because I think they film so much stuff, and then afterwards, they're like, okay, we're only going to keep this and this and this. And then that's how they piece it together. And so storylines are, like, completely cut, like, in general.
Oh, yeah.
And really good scenes are cut because they don't fit into the storyline. And it's, like, weird. Like, we saw in the RHONY preview, like, there was that scene of Dorinda screaming at Leah outside, I never fucking said that. And I, like, want to see that scene. Like,
yeah. And what about the fact that they basically cut the bravo fucking bravo from Denise? I guess they're going to bake it in somewhere along the line, but like,
I don't know. Maybe they're going to flash forward and do that. I will never forget, deterring from this for one quick second, I will never forget. It was the Real Housewives of New Jersey season 1 reunion. I was like 14 years old. And I remember watching the trailer over and over and over again. And there was this part of Caroline Manzo going, I'm about to say something crazy, and I hope my friends at Bravo have the balls to put this on. And we never saw it. I never know what I don't know what it is. I was like, what the fuck is it? I remember like watching both parts of the reunion, and like me and my mom were like sitting there, and I would like, my mom, we're Italian, I would have like a glass of wine and watch the reunion at 14 years old with my mom. And I remember being like, where the fuck is it? Where's the scene? And we never saw it. And it pisses me off. And I want to ask Caroline, what was it?
Oh my God.
I guess Bravo didn't have the balls to put it on.
I mean, okay, if they drive beautiful Denise off this show, what is left? What are they going to do? They can't keep doing this. And I think Bravo will pay Denise whatever. If she doesn't come back, it's because she feels that they flew too close to the sun. Like yeah. Like they're gonna give her the money. If she has any interest in coming back, they're gonna just give her literally whatever she wants. But if she decides, I don't need this shit, like I'm not doing this, I'm not gonna have my marriage destroyed. Yeah. What is left? Like, tell me how you were saying how like the main problem is Rinna. I mean, how do you think, what is the universe in which Rinna could become the villain and sort of like get what's coming to her? I say this, by the way, loving Lisa Rinna. Like, I love most of these people with a few exceptions, but I like to entertain all different scenarios. Yeah, like Tell me, why do you think Rinna is the central issue?
Because, and I think where Rinna works the most is when she is not a protagonist in ways. So, like, she really worked her first couple of seasons with the Munchausen stuff and the stuff with Eden and the stuff with Kim Richards, because she was going against Kyle. She was going against big players. And I think that what's happening now is she's kind of learned how to maneuver the system where she doesn't get attacked as much. And so she plays producer, and she goes after somebody who she knows that she doesn't actually have issues with. Like, I'm sure she probably has a lot of issues with Erica, with Kyle, but she's not displaying them because it's not in her best interest. So I think I'm just giving examples of more so, like, I think that if she does have a problem with somebody who's like an ally to her, she won't show it on the show for the sake of like keeping her spot, because she learned that when she was the brunt of the anger during the Bunnygate and the Munchausen stuff, that's what made her compelling to me. I was like, oh my God, I love her because she's not afraid to say it. Now she is still not afraid to say it, but only to the right people that are going to benefit her. And that's why she's so quick to throw actual friends under the bus, like Garcelle, which I don't know what happens. I guess we'll have to see it at the reunion. But Garcelle, Sutton, how Sutton's like, I've known Lisa Rinna for 10 years. I've never seen this side of her. It's just because you're being filmed. And so I think she holds it hostage by playing producers. Let the producers do their job and you do yours. So I get it. She wants to keep her job. She wants to stay on the show. But the rate she's going, I think people are starting to like realize. So
that scene of Sutton and Garcelle eating, when Garcelle was like, where do you get your money from? And Sutton's like acting all coquettish. That was like delicious. Like best scene.
So
like,
good.
Phenomenal.
But that's old school Housewives. That's old school right there.
Yeah, because it strangely like endeared me to Sutton while simultaneously cementing Garcelle as a potential rock star housewife.
Mm-hmm.
She just needs to go all in on Housewives. Like she needs to, like no one is seeing these other projects. Yeah, I mean, of course she did Jamie Foxx show and Coming to America, but like
she's known now because of the Housewives.
I didn't know who Garcelle was before.
I knew who she was just from my parents, or my mom knew who she was immediately. And I remember like she was like, oh, she was on this show. So I knew her before. But, you know, I think people underestimate the platform of like Denise Richards is like an icon. But how many people now know her because of her being on Housewives?
100.
Like they're like, oh, like. So I think it's helpful. I also think that a casting thing that they have to start doing in Beverly Hills is like make the stunt casting like one or two people. If we like look at this cast, there's like a lot of stunt casting, and it's like, you know, it only works for so long, and I don't want them to jump the shark and then like fuck themselves over. Like I think that when they made Kyle narrate that one beginning of the episode, I was like, what was that?
You mean the whole like, we were so happy then?
Yeah, so absurd. I was like, don't jump the shark. I was like, don't do it. What makes this good is like the cheekiness of it. Like I don't need you narrating it, or like it almost seemed like sitcom-y. Like they were doing a recap and she was like, and Sutton was over here, but before we knew it, that barbecue was blah 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 blah. I was like, fuck off. Like stop that. That's not her fault.
Do you think Vanderpump will be back in like 3 years?
Lisa?
Yeah.
Maybe. I think that it's like one of those things that like Lisa, I think she could have done a lot of things differently, but I think that the way that she exited was up to her on her terms, and she made it very clear that she did not want to be involved at all. And I think that she might be back, but only depending on certain things. Like listen, we know that Beverly Hills, while they might not have the most fighting, they are definitely the most vicious of all of them, the most vicious cast. There must be something that goes on that we don't see that runs people off of the show indefinitely. And like one of the only people that seems to be able to handle it, who keeps coming back in like bits and pieces, is Camille. And you know, Brandy obviously too. But you know, so many people are run off so quickly, and it's like something must happen that we don't see.
Are you referring to like like Adrian, like, is that who you refer? Like Adrian, I mean, Taylor, I don't remember why she left. I mean, aside from the obvious, but.
Adrian, gone. Lisa Vanderpump, not at the reunion. Denise stops filming with the group. Like, it's like very, boom, done.
Yeah. I mean, they sure have like a really deep bench. I mean, like where they brought them all back, you know, like the little glimmer that we saw of Adrian and Paul Nassif and Kim Richards and Brandy and then in the mix with Denise and Aaron. I mean, they're live wires. Like Adrian can be a live wire, particularly with Paul Nassif around. Like, put a camera on them. Speaking of getting paid, I once was trying to get Adrian to do an interview. This was a while ago. She wanted $5,000.
What?
$5,000
to do a podcast interview.
Yeah. So you were getting a bargain deal with Brandy.
Yeah, I was getting a bargain. What do these people realistically think? Like, do they really think that somebody's going to pay them like, that's like a fee that you would pay to, like, get Britney to come on your show. Like, it's like...
Britney.
What the fuck? Like, why does Adrian Malouf need $5,000? Maybe it's just because they don't want to do it. And they're like, well, if they pay it, like, I'll do it. Like...
Yeah. I mean, she did BravoCon because they paid her. Kim Richards does shit because they pay her. Like, these are people who they're not looking for attention. They just want money.
Yeah.
Money, honey. Anthony Lario, I love you. You have to come back. Tell everyone where they can find you. What are you working on? Tell everyone.
You can find me on Instagram at Anthony Lario, ANTHONYLARIO. I have an article coming out either today or tomorrow with top40.com, my musings on the new Folklore album that you can see.
Oh, that's great.
And yeah, I'm excited. And so, and also, like, I don't just work with housewives and other reality stars. I help people build their brands on social media, small businesses, no fake followers involved. It's not a growth service. It's a very intense, creative branding service. So if you need me, you can hit me up in my DMs.
Fantastic. All right, Anthony, you're going to come back. I also want to thank everyone who signed up for the new Patreon page. It's patreon.com/hot takes deep dives. Thank you to everyone who joined, and you can join at any time. And to start, when you sign up, you'll immediately get access to an episode I did where I give a behind the scenes of all the latest interviews I've done. So Mikey Minden, Jackie Warner, Carl Radke, Kelly Ben-Simone, and a couple others. So definitely head over there, and I have lots more fun stuff planned. I talked about collaborating more with Astrology with Andy, as you guys know, my best friend from college. I've done the Britney, the Christina episode, which is coming out, where we go head to head on our favorite songs from these artists. We've talked about doing a Mariah episode, and we want your feedback. So DM anything, any ideas you guys have that you would like me to do with a guest, with Andy, with anybody on Patreon, bonus episodes. So you can head over there, patreon.com/hot takes deep dives. Stay tuned next week. I did an episode with Ryan Bailey where we do an intensive deep dive on Bethany Ever After. So that'll be coming out next week, and we'll see you there. You can follow me, JessXNYC. Follow the show account, Hot Takes Deep Dives. Thanks, guys.